ones that are built onto the top of an original antique box. Now these boxes are sourced by me. They can take a while to get, because obviously you need the exact size for all the components of the ectomatron to fit on top. Now with these boxes, all the electronics are actually in the base of the box, and they run down through the lid and through the hinges at the back, which are concealed with material. So we're going to look at both types of ectomatron. There isn't a huge amount of difference other than that the batteries and the remote control receiver units are actually stored in different parts. Everything that's on top of the ectomatron, all of the actual working visible parts, are exactly the same. Now when you've unpacked your ectomatron, the base unit should be in this state. The arms, which are the sides of the ectoplasmic chamber, will be folded down. The spirit support unit won't be in place. The spirit bell will be in place, and also the crux radiometer. All of this is identical on both types of ectomatron. What we'll need to do first of all is insert our batteries. It's better to do this now before we actually assemble the top part. So it means we don't have to fumble around later on to insert the batteries once the whole of the ectomatron is built. Now, there are two clips either side. This is obviously the original type of ectomatron with the lift-off lid. Okay, so if we just lift the lid off, inside you have the spare ectoplasmic battery. We'll take that out because we'll need that later on. And you also have crux collection of spirit photographs, which you're able to remove. You can look at the photographs, there's no problem there. The actual 4 ectoplasm specimens that you have in the box are for show only. They don't actually come out of the box, they're not removable, they're there purely for show, so please don't try and pull them out, otherwise you will damage them. Put the base to one side for a moment. This is obviously the original type. Now, as I said on the original type, the battery compartment is actually in the lid. Now, if we just push down one side of the lid, you'll see that the actual ceiling of the box pops out. Now, this is the prototype model, which was my one, so the interior will be somewhat neater on your model. As you can see, we've got 2 battery compartments here, both 9-volt PP3 batteries. The ones that you've been supplied with are standard 9-volt PP3 batteries. Now, once these have been exhausted, I recommend you go to a hardware store in the UK like Maplin's, or in the US Radio Shack, and buy a set of PP3 9-volt rechargeable batteries. The highest current you can get, the better. These will last you a long time, and obviously they're going to cut down costs. You don't have to keep buying 9-volt batteries. Plus, if you're traveling, you can just recharge them at your hotel, and it means that you can recharge them before every single performance instead of buying a brand new set of batteries. So go and get yourself some rechargeable 9-volt batteries. The 2 9-volt slots you have here, one actually powers the remote control receiver unit, and the other one powers all of the external working components of the ectomatron. So the ectoplasmic chamber and the external spirit bell are all controlled from this other 9-volt battery unit here. So if you pop your batteries in, there are 2 on switches. Okay, I don't have any batteries in this one at the moment, but if you insert your batteries and then turn them on, then the unit is actually, that element of the unit is primed. The lid just pops back in, it's held with a magnet, it won't fall out. Okay, and that is the base of your unit all primed, ready to go before we actually start building the components, unpacking and building the components onto the top of the ectomatron. Okay, the lid can go back on. As I say, I'm keeping my ectoplasmic battery out at the moment. Okay, I'm keeping this to one side because we'll need this to actually power the spirit support unit during our performance. This is the antique box version of the crux residual ectomatron. As you can see, this one is already built. We'll go through the actual placement of all the objects on top in a moment with the prototype model, but for now I just want to show you the interior and how it differs from the standard the lift-off lid model. Okay, if we open carefully, there we go, we can see inside that the lid is actually in place. This can't be removed, but the actual base unit here, if we take the ectoplasmic battery out, you should also maybe have a photograph in here, and also you have the Crux spirit photograph collection, and also four tubes of ectoplasm, which also, whichever type of box you get, are non-removable. They're there for show only. The lid just lifts out, just pop that to one side. And as you can see, inside we have the two 9-volt battery slots, the radio control receiver unit, and everything is all nice and neatly tucked away. Again, insert your batteries, turn the switches on, and you can then pop the base back into place like that. Again, remembering to leave your ectoplasmic battery out. You can put the lid back on and then put the switch back across, the catch back across. Okay, and that is your unit primed. Right, moving back to the prototype model, you should receive it in this state, as I mentioned before, all folded down for ease of transport. Now, the first aspect we're going to look at is the ectoplasmic chamber. Now, the arms just fold up, and the glass tube slots into place, and the lid just pops on. You also have 4 bolts which actually hold the metal arms in place. You'll have 4 bolts already screwed onto the top of the lid, so if you remove these before you fit the lid on, slide the metal supports over the top and then screw the bolts in place, and that is your ectoplasmic chamber all constructed. Now, in the base of the ectoplasmic chamber we have a small circuit which produces a strobe light, which is used for spirit contact, and also a smoke generator, which we'll cover in a moment, the actual operation and the actual setup. Before we put the spirit support unit on, I'm just going to cover the bell which is on the outside. Now, the bell is used for the spirit to communicate through as a standard spirit bell, but this is obviously an electronic type bell. Now, before it was shipped, it was calibrated and it was tested to make sure the arm and everything works for you. During transit, something may have been shaken slightly out of alignment, but all you'd need to do is turn this knob on the front here, okay, and the 2 contacts on the top there. If you place a 9-volt battery against the 2 contacts, you're able to test if the bell works. If the bell's not hitting correctly, just adjust the knob on the front of the unit until you get the bell to ring correctly. On the back of the unit we have Crux radiometer. Now, the Crux radiometer will rotate in the presence of any light. Any form of light radiation or heat radiation will cause the sails to rotate. What we use for our radiometer is a candle. Now, the candle sits on this metal rod with a little candle holder on top. And during the seance, you would light the candle, and the heat and the light from the candle will cause the sails to rotate. Now, you can do a little bit of research on this. If you go on the internet and look in Wikipedia, that's about how a radiometer actually works. But essentially, it just takes any form of light or heat radiation. Inside there is a vacuum, and the sails have one black side and one silver side. So the black absorbs the heat, and the light side, the reflective side, reflects it, and that process of absorption and reflection actually causes the sails inside to move around inside the vacuum. For the seance, we use a candle on a candle holder to actually get the sails to rotate. It's an interesting piece of kit which Crooks actually devised. It was originally thought that the sails could be moved by spirit activity, and it's a true fact that Crooks actually took these along to a few of his spiritualist investigations. On the outside of the ectoplasmic chamber, we also have 3 other ectoplasmic batteries. These ectoplasmic batteries are like the ectoplasm samples inside the box, and they are there for show only. We're now going to look at the spirit support unit, which is the actual moving machine element of Crookes' residual ectometron. We just put the ectometron to one side a moment. And this is the spirit support unit. Now the spirit support unit is based around a low temperature engine. Now this engine uses heat or cold to actually power a small piston inside and to drive the flywheel. We generate the heat using a Peltier cell. Now a Peltier cell is a small ceramic plate which, when a current is passed through it, one side of the plate will heat up, the other side will cool down. We're using the hot side to drive our low temperature motor. Now inside, the Peltier cell is in the base, and what will happen is the heat from the Peltier cell will cause the air inside this section here to heat up. That will cause the air to rise, and that will push the foam diaphragm up. Now once the diaphragm is up, a valve at the top opens which actually pulls in cool air from outside down into the chamber. Now that cool air pushes the diaphragm back down. That cool air heats up, and then the diaphragm rises again, and then it sucks in cool air. And that process gets faster and faster and faster, and therefore drives the actual engine around. So as long as we have some heat source on the bottom, the motor will continue to turn. As with all old type engines, it will need a little push start to get it going. So if you give it a little push like that, it'll slow down slightly at first, but as the heating and cooling process gets faster and faster, the engine will pick up speed. Before we fit the spirit support unit, insert your 9-volt battery onto the 9-volt fly lead, okay, and that will power the unit. What you need then is your ectoplasmic battery. Now the ectoplasmic battery actually slots in to this holder here. Now when the battery is inserted into that holder, it presses a small switch, which you can see is actually just inside the base of the 2 wooden supports. Your battery slides down onto that switch, and that is the on switch. As soon as the battery hits that, it turns on the 9-volt battery, and that provides heat to the Peltier cell. Give it a few seconds to warm up, and then once it's warmed up, after about 20 seconds, give the wheel a little turn, and you'll find that the motor starts to operate on its own. The Peltier cell draws a lot of current, okay? So once the engine is moving at a sufficient speed, you can take the ectoplasmic battery out, and the heat from the Peltier cell will remain there for at least another 5 minutes and continue to drive the motor. This can be used to conserve battery power. If during your seance the wheel starts to slow down, just reinsert the ectoplasmic battery and it will start to actually gather speed again. So if the spirit support unit is slowing down, obviously it's not going to be able to support the spirit in the ectoplasmic chamber. So during the seance, you just need to remark that you need to place the battery back in to provide more power to keep the spirit happy inside the chamber. To fit the spirit support unit, actually slides in with the wooden part towards the back near the ectoplasmic chamber, and it just sits on top. Now on the standard models with the lift-off lid, you'll see that there is nothing to actually hold the spirit support unit in place. It fits nicely in there and won't fall off as long as you don't tip the actual Crux residual ectometron over. Now on the antique box versions of Crux residual ectometron, you'll see there's a small metal cog at the front here, and if you pull this out, this is the actual retaining rod which holds the spirit support unit in place. Now this rod holds the spirit support unit on top of the box, and it allows you to tip the box open without any risk of anything falling off the top of the ectometron. So just to recap, we've taken the glass tube and the lid and we've put that in place on the ectoplasmic chamber. We've moved the metal rods to support the lid and screwed them on. We've checked that the bell works by placing a 9-volt battery against the contacts and adjusting the small screw on the front to ensure the bell rings nicely. The radiometer on the back should be in place. It's actually fitted, it's not actually glued in place, but it's actually held very snugly by the base that's there. I wouldn't try to remove it for any reason, just keep it in place. The spirit support unit, the battery has been inserted and it's been placed on top of the small box area on top of the ectometron. And finally, the candle holder goes into place and the candle can be inserted, which will drive the radiometer. So the moving parts are the sails of the radiometer, the spirit support unit, then obviously anything that happens inside the ectoplasmic chamber during the seance. Both the batteries have been inserted into the base, the switches have been turned on, and everything is now ready for a test performance. Before we actually go into the rigging up of the performance, I'm just going to go over the other things that you'll have received with your ectometron package. First of all, the 3 9-volt PP3 batteries. Of course, these should now be installed inside your ectometron, and as I've mentioned before, it may be an idea to replace these with rechargeable batteries at some point. You'll have a yellow container like this. Now this is the smoke which goes inside the ectoplasmic chamber. These are standard smoke bombs which are used by plumbers. Now they are very low odour, they don't smell like the joke shop smoke bombs that you get, which have a very strong, almost sulphurous type odour to them. These are low odour, and you get enough in one of these yellow tubs to probably provide you with about 25 to 30 performances. When it comes, it will come with this grey igniter surface on top. All you need to do with a knife is just cut that off, and then underneath is the white powder. The white powder breaks down very easily using a screwdriver just to loosen the powder, so you've just got enough for the actual performance itself. So you've got a smoke bomb in there. You will also have 2 remote control units. Now these are both identical, they're both paired with your ectometron, and you'll see they've got 4 buttons. Channel 1 controls the external bell. Now this is used for the Q&A with the spirit. So channel 1 is the bell. Channel 2 controls the strobe lights inside the ectoplasmic chamber. This is used to emulate electrostatic discharge within the ectoplasmic cloud inside the chamber. I tend not to use it that much, but when you're performing seance in a darkened room, it's very dramatic. It adds a shock factor to your audience as no one's expecting it. It can also be used for Q&A between the spirit as well as the external bell. And channel 3 controls the nichrome wire igniter in the base of the ectoplasmic chamber. Now this wire is used to ignite the smoke powder. Inside the base there is a small metal cup which is covered in tin foil. You'll probably find it also already has a greyish residue in there, which is where I've tested it in the studio for you. Now the wire needs to be bent downwards. The wire is crimped at both ends and held in place by 2 small chock blocks. Now the wire should be bending down, so it's actually bending down into the base of the cup. Now this has 2 purposes. One is to ignite the smoke powder in the base of the unit, And secondly, it's used at the end of the seance to create the vortex, which is used to show the spirit departing. Channel 4 is actually a spare channel. It has no purpose at the moment, but as things progress and we all have new ideas about performance, it could be opened up to control another aspect of the ectometron. But for now, it doesn't actually control anything. You will also have one old English penny. Now this old English penny just goes over the hole in the base of the ectometron. It just covers the hole. So when you have your ectometron on display, people aren't questioning why there's a hole in the base of that chamber. You can just put the old English penny there. I usually place a photograph inside the chamber as well as an old English penny, and I just tell people that they're used as catalysts to contact or to draw the spirit through from the spirit world. So a coin from that era and a photograph of the person who I wish to contact. Just remember that when you're going to do a performance, you don't have the coin in place. You actually remove it prior to your performance, otherwise no smoke will emit into the ectoplasmic chamber. One thing to note with all of Crux Residual Ectometron is that, as I've mentioned before, it is primarily a piece of functional artwork. It is delicate, so treat it as if it was over 150 years old and you won't go far wrong. The battery, ectoplasmic battery itself, is quite strong, but again, handled wrong, it could break. It's best not to let members of your audience handle the actual ectometron itself, but people in general don't want to touch it. It looks genuinely old and they're afraid of damaging it, so you'll be quite surprised that most people who look at it don't actually want to touch it too much, but it might be wise to keep it away from small children if you have it on display in your home, as I've found out with my young children. The prototype has been through various states of repair, so highlighting those weak points, I've tried to strengthen them as best as I can for you, but please bear in mind that it is a sculpture. It does have its magical purpose, but it is a piece of artwork and therefore it is delicate.